So, good evening to you all. Thanks for joining the Africa Room. My name is Janos Förster. I'm a senior researcher at the Center for Development Institute. You heard me briefly trying to portray what I put in a video in the beginning, outlining what governance is and how that relates to the bioeconomy. I'm working for Center of Development Studies now for 4 years on topics of bioeconomy and conducted case studies in South Africa and in Thailand. And also had, Laura, that's why I liked your European network focus also on more the local bioeconomies and how they relate to, what was called the more capitalized actors or more powerful actors maybe. So that was a very, very interesting local addition to the studies that we do at CEF. This is related to measuring the bioeconomy and a project called Strive. It links to governance of the bioeconomy, and it is about key enabling technologies. So it had transdisciplinary focus. And again, now we have, I think, yes, the right number of people. Again, my name is Janos Förster. Thanks very much for joining with me today, also as a co-moderator and contributing to what we have heard so far is Ben Allen from the International European Environmental Policy Institute. We are supported by Ms. Federica Ahrens. Hi, Federica. If we have some technical glitches to solve, we are, as probably some people have not yet really clicked on the right room, we're in the Africa room here, technical hiccups and some housekeeping issues. I would just like to this little slide for those of you who have not yet introduced the link, event code, or use the QR code to jump onto our coming up Slido polls. Please do so. And also for housekeeping issues, I will come back to the slide if you have just not had the chance. Technical housekeeping issues, please do not close the main conference room on Big Blue Button, otherwise you just have to log back in. After switching back to the room in Big Blue Button, do not close the Zoom breakout rooms. Please do not close the Zoom window itself. Apologies for that little typo there. We'll have some interactive polls and interaction through polls, and some discussion hopefully will be enabled on this platform. And we come back with a little synthesis and join the main room for an overall synthesis. So we will just ask you, hopefully creating a lively discussion to cast your vote on certain issues, write short answers in our polls, and we'll be using Slido for this. If you just join us for the session here, and then let me just briefly explain, please scan the QR code again. Punch it in, open a window of your browser, or participate using your smartphone or tablet. So for those that have not switched it, for those that have not scanned it, please do so now. Thanks very much. I guess we can maybe start the first two polls right away, which gives us an idea of who is in the room and who we are talking to, and we can also use that later on in our synthesis report. It links to where you come from and what your profession is. And afterwards, we want to talk a bit about the barriers of sustainable or bio and circular economy transformation from a regional and contextualized perspective, how to promote it maybe in a more sustainable way, and what that means for circular approaches and resource use, and where we see maybe conflicting goals of implementing bioeconomy and some SDG targets, and maybe what are the strengths and weaknesses of these measuring tools. So if we can start the first poll right away, that would be a good idea.
Let's see, a few people are entering this. Is it clear to everyone that the link with Slido goes to the general link, and then in the drop-down menu we need to select the Africa room?
I was hoping for having a bit more engagement from participants from the African continent itself, but also time-wise and maybe bandwidth, it's not the best time and place to join. Now I can see Germany, United Kingdom, South Africa, Nigeria, Finland. And then please start the next poll. So the next poll is, please choose what your professional background is, politician, scientist, etc. 100% researcher and scientist, NGO.
I have a question. Where do I fill in the information? So Jan, maybe you want to go through that again. I think that's scanning the Slido QR code and or clicking the link.
You could use either. It's always a good idea to base these discussions on some evidence. We do have some evidence now of group members. We've talked a lot about evidence-based policy and governance, especially in this pandemic times. For sustainability performance, it is also crucial. We've also spoken about intellectual property rights and governance mechanisms, also related to using resources from the environment to create products and services, for example, which is an essential part of the bioeconomy. And those evidence-based decisions need platforms, need mechanisms, as some speakers already in the panel have pointed out. And I hope that in the meantime, while speaking about governance and intellectual property rights and other mechanisms, everyone has so far gotten the gist of Slido and how to vote or how to click. Everyone, if possible, if you are presentable, if you want to, please switch on your cameras. We can have a little bit of a discussion here by seeing each other. Thank you very much. I can see Nigeria and Prague. Mr. Werther, I can see that you have participated in the discussion in the chat from both countries. That's interesting. I can see the vote from South Africa.
Yes, although I don't actually live in South Africa at the moment, but I've said I'm from there.
Okay, great. Good. So we have a very a clear picture of researcher and scientists. We have a very clear picture of 80% or 70% Europe. And that was somehow also mirroring other sessions in this Global Bioeconomy Summit. So I found very interesting one thing in the chat. Maybe we can start also by talking about the barriers to sustainable bio and circular economy transformation. We're outlining big words, and sometimes we have to fill them a bit with some empirical, but also some relations to on-the-ground actions and what relates to the context in the countries. So maybe that's also a good idea. I really liked hearing from the European Rural Network. I wasn't that familiar with it, but it seems to me that, and I also discussed that yesterday with a colleague, that sometimes we can also have a south-north transfer of knowledge because community-led projects have been implemented in so-called developing countries for a while now, and I think we could maybe learn from that. Laura, would you link to this?
Yeah, I fully agree. I actually have personally a history of working more outside Europe than in Europe, and often in my work nowadays, I see very nice ways of, let's say, engaging, reaching out to people at local level, creating networks, partnerships that do have very, very concrete and operational outcomes, and that for me are part of the governance also. And I often think, wow, this is something that would really merit being exported and introduced somewhere else. like, for example, the model of locally led community development that's applied in European rural areas. That would be very interesting in other parts of the world. And also the system of applied research that is really run through small groups of farmers that are really steering the process together with scientists, and they often tackle very concrete farm level challenges and problems and try to find innovative science-based solutions to them. And it works really well. It has been a success story in the European Union, and this kind of model would be very welcome, I imagine, in many other parts of the world where the research tends to be light years away from the reality on the ground and people's actual concrete needs. And I know that there are organizations that do work with the, let's say, north-south knowledge transfer, peer-to-peer learning, peer-to-peer collaboration, and also south-south. I think that's maybe even more relevant dimension of knowledge transfer nowadays than north-south.
Thanks very much. I hear many different dimensions that are relevant for all of us. It was the science policy nexus. It was the rural or so-called inclusive bioeconomy, the raising the voice for a bit of local scale and social dimensions of it, which in many countries are actually driving bioeconomic developments. Anyone else? Any comments on that from regional, local perspectives, please? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite involved over the years with the BioInnovate Africa program that covers Eastern African countries. And that's a sort of good model, I think, for where, it's Swedish funded, but it's really driving bioeconomy development in Eastern Africa. And so using resources that, that are available in Sweden, but really participatory processes to get Eastern African scientists, policymakers, and the private sector all working together. And it's a pity, I think Julia Secura was supposed to be one of the speakers in the session we've just had, but I mean, he leads that program. And really, I think, they're doing great work, and there's currently a drive to get an Eastern African bioeconomy strategy in place. So, that's a big initiative that's ongoing, and it's currently with the East African community to try and finalize that.
Thanks very much for everyone. Please feel free to add from your perspective.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm here in the Czech Republic, but I'm originally from Nigeria.
Welcome.
Yeah. What I can say is that if we look at what is happening here and in Africa, or let's say Nigeria, when you talk about Nigeria, definitely you're talking about the whole Africa to some extent. That the commitment, sometimes we discover that there is no linkage between the private sector and the government. That individually you see some people struggling with the issue of bioeconomy, trying to make positive impact, but then we discover that the government is not really there to support them, because we need a conducive environment that, for instance, electricity. You'll discover that those that are into agricultural-related activities, they struggle to produce, but these people need input. They need rules to move their, for instance, input to the farm and then output from farm to the market. Or maybe after they produced, they need the product part of the waste, maybe to generate electricity or to do other things that will help them to maybe create incomes. But sometimes there's no electricity or no road or no, some of them, they need access to finance, but it is not most times, not all the times, but most times it's not available. And that becomes very difficult for those that are interested in bioeconomy or circular economy, because the government is not really willing to support them. And sometimes the government is not also good to say the government is not supporting them at all. But when you look at the level, that maybe if you go to Nigeria, you go to some part of the country, then you discover that the government, maybe in some sectors are ready to support them, maybe 10%, but the remaining 90%, then there is nothing. So at the end of the day, even those that are struggling, are working hard, at the end, it looks like they are not really doing anything. So when we talk about the support, maybe from the west from the north to the south, in this case, we have to be ready for that, because if we are not ready, then we can only discuss about economy, but nothing will be there to show in practical, from the practical aspect of it.
Okay, thanks very much. Also, many valuable points. Access is one of them. I heard from also previous panelists that the Nagoya Protocol and biodiversity protection, together with intellectual property rights, for example, when creating a topical, an ointment or a biopharmaceutical product from the biodiversity, that these issues are very strongly related, and sometimes maybe summing it up, a step backwards is also a step forwards. So we have to think about what we need to capacitate and which resources are needed in order to enable bioeconomy before a whole program is launched out that is maybe difficult to implement with given circumstances. I would just not cut off the discussion right here, but maybe to move to the next poll. We can continue this discussion in between the polls. Please bear in mind what you wanted to add. And also because the poll's linking to exactly what we have just said. So please, poll 3, ready to go.
I'll say one thing whilst people are filling in the poll. I'm interested to hear, particularly from regional representatives, what type of transition and therefore governance is useful in the context of your different countries. Though often we talk in, Europe has developed in a particular way, the countries within Europe have developed in a particular way, and that need not be the same because we've learned through that process in other regions. Telecommunications was a great example. We had very fixed telecommunication networks. The African countries moved straight to mobile networks. And I think maybe in the bioeconomy transition, there could be something there to explore as well.
I think Ben also just from his experience highlighted the discrepancy sometimes also of access in a way to the basic services or basic things in order to enable more capacity resources that can be harnessed to produce value chains, and mostly from my perspective speaking about local value chains and rather small scale bioeconomy projects, but aggregated they do a lot in many countries. Right, thanks. We have votes coming in. I think there's a big country in the north of this world that also had this sentence quite prominent in the last 2 days, that votes are coming in. We're going to see a lot of change also, as we heard from the US panelists on the US American bioeconomy. Investment funds, lack of capacity, strategic implementation. Thanks very much for this. This will be, according to how much we often have said something, then create a word cloud. Federico, so nice to secure those word clouds, and in the end we can probably have a look at them, and they will also feed into what we have as a synthesis report. And now then Ellen and me would also like to, if someone wants to add or clarify what of these 3 top ratings that you have done, give us a bit of beef, add a bit of context to it. Which role or which of them would you think is most crucial, or would you think a hierarchy of those are?
Yes, it's actually Miss Nalisa.
Miss, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm not looking appropriate for a video. So
No worries,
if you will allow me not to switch on.
No
so
worries.
I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Wangara Nalisa. I'm with FAO Namibia. I'm a consultant working on the drafting of the bioeconomy strategy. So we have received sponsorship from FAO to draft our bioeconomy strategy. So the project started in October, so it's quite a new project. So the initial part of it is to just find, to put together a bioeconomy multi-sectoral working group, because one of the issues that I highlight today is policy issues, because we have different ministries working on different policies that are, or different mandates, but then bioeconomy is sort of, it overlaps with many mandates of different sectors. So the initial activity we want to do is bring everybody together and sort of do a stock-taking analysis of what is happening in Namibia at the moment. So we do understand from limited knowledge that there are pockets of bioeconomy activities happening, but then how do we streamline this, and so that we can formalize the sector. And when we formalize the sector, we will be able to have policy, targeted policy frameworks that will also improve the different sectors. So that is what we are planning to do. So it's
okay. I think we lost you there. Thanks very much for the contribution. Institutional fragmentation, institutional decisive power from local to government, national government, and industries, and local discrepancies or asymmetries. Maybe I've heard from that. Anyone just very briefly to say what are those 3 that you rated are the most important, and why? And if not, then this is also okay, because we have around 15 minutes left now.
Okay, maybe I should
comment. Yeah, give us 30 seconds, please.
Okay. What I can say is that maybe somehow it's a bit difficult for African countries, but they have the chance to copy. I mean, they can see what is being done in the developed countries. Like, for instance, CAP, Common Agricultural Policy of the European Union, that the other and one presented. It is very important that African countries look at what is happening. They can easily copy it and do the same. But as the other lady said, there's need for policy framework. And I mean, I would say that the policies have been there, but the major problem also is implementation. We have a lot of policies, but implementation. Without that, it will be difficult for us to experience the bioeconomic or whatever that is happening in other parts of the world.
Thank you very much. I think many would agree from the country perspective. Please, Michael.
I'm Consultant Michael, Principal Science Officer, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Uganda. Apparently, we are developing a national bioeconomy policy, and previously we conducted a regulatory impact assessment, and we found out that there was unsustainable utilization of our natural resources, and then also underutilization. So basically, we have many policies within the agriculture and natural resources, but they don't clearly come up with solutions to harness our bioeconomy. So in the policy, one of the strategies we are trying to come up with incentives that we shall give to to beef up these small scale industries to come in and then they promote our economy or exploit our natural resources such that we exploit them in a sustainable way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. Please just all switch off your microphones if you're not speaking. Thank you very much. Also, just what I could understand, because you were breaking there a little bit, is reiterating the tone that we have posed here as well, and that also relates to the next poll. If your government asks you for advice on how to promote sustainable bioeconomy, I would recommend to strengthen. And here the poll comes. Thank you very much. 4 answers are possible. So make a selection on the most important. Sure, if there are other aspects and issues which are not mentioned here in the poll, we can discuss them. But so far, I can see a very dynamic picture, but inclusive growth and social aspects, not surprisingly from our discussion so far, are coming up. I also recently participated in a panel for a European Green New Deal and what it could mean for probably an African Green Deal with Southern African scientists, and they also rang different but very similar bells according to what we have just outlined. Infrastructure was one of the big things. We have a study in our research project on Nigerian biorefineries and other structures, but this is also a very high-tech bioeconomy orientation. And according to the different studies that are done, including ours in the world, we have, by that time, 2018, we had 44 national bioeconomy strategies, and only 12 of them had actually catered for negative effects of a bioeconomy in terms of social, air, water, land, or forest. So there was a big governance gap on safeguarding biodiversity that we have found in this first study, and I think we still have a bit of work to do. South Africa has some interesting examples regarding intellectual property rights and traditional ownership rights, which are traditionally not written down somewhere, and that is taken into a data repository for ownership. So that I found very interesting, just as a brief story. While checking the results, regional bioeconomy hubs also links to a more inclusive growth and social aspects. So the regional bioeconomy hub strategy has also been applied in many countries, and also could be as a decentralized bioeconomy approach described. Build domestic bioeconomy research, development, innovation. Well, thank you very much for voting on this. So coming back to my governance, little quick intro. It is the bottom-up perspective where things are happening, but it is the top-down perspective where the regulative frame needs to be set as incentives and as constraints. Moving forward to poll number 5, because also our time is moving forward, please, where do you see, and also linking to what we've just said, conflicting goals and risks between implementing bioeconomy strategies and potential SDG targets? And in between, please continue rating, and Ben, others who want to share something, please feel free to do so.
Thanks, Jan. Janos, you're doing such a good job at narrating this. It's hard to know where to come in on the points. I mean, this is quite an interesting one as it is. We're seeing poverty and inequality coming out up there with biodiversity. I'd be interested for participants whether that links to the strong focus we had on financing, which came into the previous word cloud around barriers to bioeconomy as well.
I guess it also links to the very well-known link between dependence on natural resources in rural settings and a direct dependence for firewood and other things, for example, and biodiversity protection. So I can see forest and biodiversity and land being top rated here as potential conflict areas. That is interesting because it links to a paper we have written and the first study on governance gaps we have done. Maybe we can bring in back the regional focus here a little bit and ask Laura from a European perspective what she has voted there and maybe why.
I actually voted forest.
Okay.
Just because I have the feeling that in my region, it's the key focus of bioeconomy is the forest bioeconomy, and I'm not always sure that it is being developed according all the due safeguards and biodiversity goals and so on. But I think the outcome of poverty and inequality getting such a big vote is quite interesting, because like what we tend to see in our work is that bioeconomy is a means for example, for smallholder farmers to diversify what they are doing. And in some cases also, it's an opportunity for people who used to be merely producers of raw materials to integrate further in the value chains and get more, a bigger position, a better position in the value chains. So I'm surprised. I never thought that in some other parts of the world, the development of bioeconomy could be linked to the increase of poverty and inequality.
Yeah, it's indeed interesting, depending on which product. Sorry, guys, this is my timer for wrapping a little bit quicker up. Yeah, thanks for this contribution. Maybe we can start the last poll right away. All right. No, then we are. Okay, thanks. Jan, if you still with us and hear us, then we have just finalized the last poll. No, but that is open now. The last poll is open. Please just participate. Thank you very much for your thoughts in this breakout room. And maybe we can convene back to the session. Thanks. And don't close the windows, please. Leave the room, but don't close Zoom. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Janos.